everyone, welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. It's 2025, everyone, and a new year brimming with fresh opportunities and the potential for real change in the lives of so many Nigerians. And tonight we'll be taking a closer look at the Tinubu administration's second budget, currently under scrutiny at the National Assembly. And can it deliver hope and relieve millions of Nigerians desperately need? Meanwhile, insecurity continues to be a painful incident that we are seeing in some part of the northern region of the country. A stark reminder of the challenges still facing our nation. Amidst all of this, Nigeria remains resilient, holding on to the promise of a better life. Tonight, we shall be unpacking some of these issues for you. But let's tell you that President Bola Tinubu has since arrived in the Middle East, where he's in the United Arab Emirates for the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week event. He left Nigeria and he has since arrived in that country, where he will be holding meetings and attending the conference, the Sustainability Week conference in Abu Dhabi. The trip to the Middle East is at the invitation of the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. All right then. Tonight, our first major attention will be about some of the security situation we're seeing in some part of northern Nigeria, the 2025 budget, and exactly what you as a citizen should be expecting from this government. What are the hopes? What are the way forward for Nigerians? Tonight, I'm being joined by a lawyer and the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the 2023 election, Prince Adebayo, is live for us here in Abuja. So it's a pleasure having you tonight.
Good to see you, Sean.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you. What are your expectations? Let me ask you. First and foremost, you're a privileged Nigeria in every ramification, and so there are millions of people who are hoping that this new year will bring for them. They don't know where it's coming from. They don't know how it's going to happen, but they think that this year is going to be good tidings, great things for us. But what are your own expectations as a citizen?
My expectation as a citizen is that the democracy we have will continue, which will give us an opportunity to ventilate our ideas, and that the government of the day will recognize the cooperation, the extraordinary cooperation that Nigerians have given to the Tinubu administration, and that the government will now turn a new leaf and try to do something immediately to relieve the excruciating pain that the people are going through. That the government will realize that the government does not have eternal life, that the government is approaching its midterm, and anything it wants to do for Nigerians is already had almost half of the time to do it, and that this year they will address one, insecurity. They will also address the issue of poverty. They will address factor price fluctuation. They will address the issue of employment to see that the people who are desperately poor have the ability to take care of themselves if they had an opportunity to earn a living by working, and that the infrastructures that the government is supposed to build to aid productivity will be built, and that the political class will think less of themselves and think more of the people, and the amount of money that has been included in the budgets for the maintenance of people in high places, that they will review a lot of them downwards and divert these resources appropriately in line with Chapter 2 of the Constitution to the welfare of the people. And that in a way we can invest in agriculture and make food cheaper for the people, because the major challenge facing the people of Nigeria right now, apart from insecurity, is hunger. That hunger arises from the inflation in the prices of goods and services, especially food. So it's not the case of people not knowing how to manage. There's no more room for Nigerians to manage the tiny budget, the tiny salaries, and that the government will do something about that, and that the government will also do something about the cost of electricity and other services, and the cost of education, and the cost of healthcare. So if the government can address that, then we can hope that the next government will do far better than this. Because what they are doing now, you can see that the budget is called budget of restoration. So what they are doing is basically to try to, what they can do is to try to at least give people back a bit of the comfort that they made the people enjoy, which they have taken away by their fiscal and monetary policies.
I mean, in over 1 year of this government, first and foremost, when we are entering into 2025, it's a brand new year. It presents itself with a lot of opportunities and potentials of greater things that could happen to citizens, individuals, state government, local government, and even the government at the center. But your appraiser of the Tinubu government for the last 1 year plus, what would it be?
It will be poor attempts, and it will be missed opportunities. And if I'm to tell them, there's a lot of room for improvement.
When you say poor, I mean, if you were to grade it, and academically speaking, 10 being the highest, 0 being the lowest, when you mean poor, how would you grade this government?
Well, 20 percentile, maybe 22%. So if you have a student who scores 22%, you know, that's it. If to be fair to them, 22%, because in some areas they made attempts, in some areas they just threw away the opportunities. So they have not used, and that's how I measure it. I measure it by how much of the opportunities for growth and development have they taken. They've taken less than 22%. You will even notice that even the Speaker of the House of Representatives, when the President addressed the joint session of the National Assembly, remarked that the 2024 budget had not been fully implemented. And you will see that even the 2024 budget has now been extended by the National Assembly to almost the middle of this year. So that's, they haven't taken opportunity. So it's not about a personal measurement, it's just an objective metric of how far they have done in terms of dealing with the issues. And you will see the implication of that in terms of, for example, how much employment have they generated? You see, they haven't even taken unemployment down by 22%. If you look at inflation, they've worsened it. If you look at poverty index, they've worsened it. So the measurement is not just a political measurement. It's a measurement based on data coming from within their own government.
And I'll ask you, before I would go deeper into the budget and look at some of the concerns and some of the expectations, for those who understand policy and governance, anyone will know that before you enter into governance, you must have a vision driven by good intentions. From that, you have to have a strategy. Then put up a plan. From your plan, accountability comes and focus in delivering on those vision that you have. If you look at those dynamics and those templates that I've reeled out, would you say that this government has a clear-cut vision? Do they have good intentions? Because in that way, a lot of people have said they met a lot of rot on the ground. Things were terrible. But look, if we judge this government based on what has been met on the ground, there are those who believe that even if your likes had won the election, you would have experienced a horrible, terrible situation on the ground. Economy was in shambles. Insecurity was a major problem. Whichever person had won the election, a lot of analysts said would have met a lot of problems and challenges on the ground. But based on the initial concept of the mind of any leader getting into power, the vision and the intentions, would you say the vision and intention of the Tinubu leadership is in the right place?
All I can say is a fact that when you are elected into an office, you meet what you meet there. But if you study very well before you come in, you can almost predict what you will meet. Like now, if it pleases God and they want to replace Tinubu administration in 2027, we already know what they are doing. We know what we are likely to meet there. So the level of surprise should not be that radical. You should know what you're meeting. You are watching a match, and it's halftime, and your team is 3 goals down. You already know. You've been watching the match. So you don't, it's not when you take over as a coach that you discover that you're 3 goals down, because you've been watching the match from the beginning of the match. You know you're 3 goals down. Then what do you do next? Do you remove the goalkeeper, who actually is the best player there? Do you remove the captain of the team? Do you change the form? So the moment you take over, you should stop talking about the fact that you were 3 goals down. You start to be accountable for the action you took when you took over, because subsequently you met 3 goals down when you came in, but since you came in, you have considered 5 goals. So you cannot be complaining about the 3 goals you met on the ground. President Tinubu, from our assessment of him, is very sincere. However, he's sincerely wrong in the approach he has used so far.
Okay, let's take it one after the other. You think that he has good intention and is sincere, but yes, he has a wrong approach.
That's correct. There are 3 errors. Number 1 error is that he wanted to do fiscal management, which you have to do in government. He wanted to do fiscal reform, which is to say, I don't like the idea that government is spending so much money on certain things like subsidy, petroleum subsidy, like funding, try to defend the naira by actually throwing your money at it, and that was causing a lot of deficit in the government financing, which deficit was also creating monetary problem. So what did he do? He removed the subsidy in a manner in which factor cost started rising, inflation started rising, creating problem for the central bank on how to manage inflation and foreign exchange. Now, at the same time, it's still running deficit anyway. So you see the problem. So it caused ripples in the larger economy, but the original problem he wanted to solve, he still hasn't solved it. All the money saved in the name of subsidy removal, all the money disappeared. He's still having to borrow more. So now the money diverted from subsidy has not raised employment in the economy. So there's no way you could say, oh, since they came, employment numbers have become more positive. So that's why I said the approach he took is wrong. Then if you look at the system he wants to run, which is a neoliberal system which he has the right to run, he has the mandate to do what he wants to do because he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do when he was campaigning. The problem is that the way he has set up his economic team, there's no sign that they are proactive. They are only reacting to the consequences of their earlier actions. So they are perpetually defending, perpetually behind. So the economic team is not nimble enough, it's not sharp enough. Even if he doesn't go outside his party to look for people to run the economic team, within his party, he has enough talent there. Along that, they are within the rubric of their own belief. He has not used even the best of the APC people. So, and you will see in a few places where he got the appointment right, you will see that within the same milieu. Let me give you an example that will tell you that the story of what I met on the ground is not a valid thing to say. Imagine if Wike had been saying, oh, I met the FCT, no street light, the roads are... He's not saying that. He goes straight to the business and he's doing it and you can see it. So, you look at the guy in the interior. He didn't say, oh, what I met on the ground. Oh, millions of passports, backlog, all of that. He's not doing that. So every time you watch the TV, where do you see President Tinubu go? He goes to FCT to open one road. He goes to Sauka or somewhere in the Ministry of Interior to do one technological system or the other. So imagine if he was doing that in marine and blue economy. If he was doing that in agriculture.
Does that economy does that ministry?
No, they're just singing blues there right now. So if he goes there and do something like that in agriculture, the first minister he shows was quarreling with children that they were going to school too early, age of 18 and all of that. There's a lot of money in the education sector. A lot of money there that could have been used to transform the university, create employment, expand the faculty. They don't do any of those things. So that's why I'm saying that the president himself, I understand his vision. I don't agree with it, but I understand him. What he is trying to do is that I will soften the Nigerian economy, and I will get Nigerians used to a bit of suffering, and I will soften the economy. Then foreign investment will come by way of foreign direct investment. But none of that has happened. And what it hasn't happened is that the environment is not macroeconomically stable enough for foreign investors to look at how local investors are reacting. I have money in my pocket, and I'm watching President Tinubu's budget. I haven't seen anything in this year's budget that suggests to me that I should bring that little money in my pocket and risk it in the economy. Therefore, my partner who is in China, Indonesia, anywhere, or USA, will also be more skeptical. So what I want us to understand is that they should stop talking about what they met on the ground. Apart from the fact that their party has been in power for 9 years, but I don't want to go into politics, they should stop talking about what they met on the ground, because what they met on the ground is what they used to campaign. They knew what they would meet on the ground. So there's no excuse about it.
But realistically, if you became president in 2023, did you imagine that this was a quantum of challenge that you would have met if you were
I was expecting it worse. I was expecting it worse because if you look at President Buhari's years in office, it was a year of suspense, where it's like the country went into coma, and occasionally will come out and do something. And it may have to do with the fact that the president was ill at some part of it. It may be because his VP and the president, the former VP and the former president, they appear to have the same policy, because when the president travels, something else will happen. And in the end, overall, they had a mismanaged central bank that allowed them to mismanage their budget, and they borrow unnecessarily, and then they mismanage the currency and everything. So I knew that was the case. But once you come in, you do not worsen the case. If you meet a patient in the hospital who has a very high BP, the first thing you do is not to give them salty food and all of that will worsen it. So you need to understand that when you come in, you have to stop the bleeding. You have to raise all the indices that you need to start to do normalization. The problem is, in short, if I were to blame President Tinubu, was that he did not stabilize the economy. When he came in, your job was to stabilize the economy. Well, just like you stabilize a patient in the hospital, then you start to do the treatment. Now he wants to do the treatment. I've seen some of the speeches he's making here and there. He now wants to do this stabilization, but he already applied the wrong medicines. So the patient is even in a very terrible state already. So if he can pay attention, have his own program, not just honoring Dubai today, Abu Dhabi tomorrow, and all of that, he needs to have his own coordinated economic plan and start to ensure that this 2025 budget, which I think is a poorly written, poorly articulated budget, however, if you start to implement it, in fact, go back a little step and finish strong the 2024 budget, which they mismanaged. If they finish that one strongly, and then they begin the 2025 budget and start to pin things down and create a level of stability. For example, if they can keep the naira not to fluctuate for 120 days, I will know that they are serious. Just don't let it fluctuate for 120 days.
You should just stay at one.
It will.
But it does look like they were not very ambitious about the projections for the naira to dollar exchange, because they pegged it at 1,500. And so if they peg it in the 2025 budget at that rate, you imagine what is it right now. They are also not very ambitious, and they are not thinking that things could get better more than what it is presently.
When I look at that, I started thinking like a Scottish. I will give them Scottish double entry, in the sense that if they manage it well, they can balance the middle. Do you know why? If they raise it unrealistically low, which is what some people believe, unrealistically low, what it means is that in the management of the financing of the budget, in the expenditure, they have to spend more naira to be able to meet up the number. On the other hand, if they increase the sale of crude oil and other foreign receipts, they will also have additional higher money because when, for example, there will be an excess crude account, for example, for the first time. Maybe if they manage something in terms of solid minerals, they can have excess solid mineral account. They'll have all these arbitrage excesses that, okay, we thought that if we sold 1 million barrels of crude oil, we were going to get maybe $160 million, but $150 million, but now we're getting $160 million. So they will have all the little things to even out and finance the budget. But the key issue is that when you are implementing a budget, it must have real impact on the street. Pay your debt on time, because they still have a lot of debt unpaid. They still have treasury bills that they are using court order to slow down. There are all kinds of administrative problem. When I spoke with manufacturers and other people, they were talking about the fact that the lag time, T plus X, when you are trying to buy foreign exchange, that the T plus X, the X sometimes more than 1 month, the X up to 2 months. So you pay on January or February 1, you pay for forex in Naira. You don't get forex until April. So they need to bridge that. They need to do well with paying contractors on time and making sure that if I was the president, I would have told my finance minister, anybody who does any contract for the government must be paid within 21 days. So everybody in the industry...
What's the implication of that?
Is that it will bring back the guilt edge in government contracts, because if you discover that somebody got a contract from federal government of Nigeria, in the past, they will go to a bank and borrow money without collateral, because you know that the federal government will never fail. But now, when you do project with the federal government, you spend 2 years, 3 years, you have not been paid. So they need to bridge that. They need to settle all of this behavioral profile that the government has in the business community. We want to balance that. Why I'm emphasizing that is because they are hoping to have, all their hope is on foreign investment coming in. And these are all the housekeeping that you need to do.
But don't we need to actually energize on revitalize and wake up local production, encourage local production, feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, empower ourselves, ensure that Nigerians get back to the farm, Nigerians get back to the field, Nigerians get back to the industry, and we start producing Nigeria for Nigeria products, just like Trump will say,
you are talking
Nigeria first. Shouldn't that also be a very major focus and agenda of this government?
If the government was an SDP government, it's not. What you just read out is the SDP manifesto. The election is over. I'm analyzing their own, because these were the options they should have taken. These are the options we offer to the people.
Because I'm thinking that what is more concrete and what's most visible? A foreign direct investment that you need to work hard to encourage, and what locally you can just energize and revitalize. Look at regional economies and see what industries you can work with state government to set up. Under 18 to 20 months, you will see industries that will come up and start producing. Isn't that possible?
That is not only possible, it is mandatory to do so. But they're not thinking along those lines. You see, what they know, I can tell you, is that for international investment, which is my field, you need 6 years of stability for foreign investors to give you foreign direct investment. For foreign portfolio investment, if there is a room for them to do profit taking within 3 months, they will come. So if they see that there be a gap, arbitrage in your foreign exchange, arbitrage in your opportunity in your stock market, for example, if they see that the stock market is undervalued because of the exchange rate, they can pump money in, and then when they pump it up, they sell and go. That is happening. However, to do foreign direct investment, which is what President Tinubu is hoping on, to do that, you need 6 years of stable fiscal and monetary and trade and structural reforms. 6 years. So, and they don't have 6 years, they have 2 years more in government. So that's why we, in the SDP, when we were running, we said, what we're going to do is this. We come in and make sure first, we take care of the revenue of government to say there's no leakage. Even under President Tinubu's second year, there's still a lot of leakage in government revenue. Second, we manage the monetary environment to make sure that the inflation is single digit. They are targeting 15% inflation. That's not a good target. But if they achieve that, it's better than what they have now. But that is not good enough, because what you want to get at the end of the day is a situation where factor prices become stable and people can see that the naira is as valuable in their hand and reliable and dependable in their hand as any other currency. So they will retain their wealth in naira. They will not be rushing to change to foreign exchange. Then you would bring employment to a level where people can actually, if they want to live well, they can make contribution before they live well. They can get a job to do, and that job should be able to sustain them. And then you will use the rest of your money to try to improve your infrastructure. Because when you improve infrastructure over time, you would lower costs for everybody and things will be easy. Once you can go from Abuja to Ilorin within 3 hours and return the same day, once you can do that gradually up to Sokoto, up to Port Harcourt, things will improve. But look at where I see that they are fundamentally in some serious trouble. They went from 35 trillion last year to 47.9 trillion. But what does it take them to? It took them back to $28 billion because of how they have handled the foreign exchange policy that they're taking. So they are, now you are
so in terms of volume, in terms of the number, yes, we have a higher, and there are a lot of people who say they might push the envelope to about 50 trillion
yes,
by the time the National Assembly, because the constituency projects, they will add all of those and possibly push it about 50 trillion. What we had the last time may be lower in terms of the figure, but in terms of the volume, actual sense,
purchasing power,
in the value of it,
yes,
the budget of 2025 is actually lower
$5 billion lower, because they were at 33 billion last year. They are now 28 billion. They are 5 billion underwater. So, and remember, they have this borrowing, and they have 15 trillion of that money into debt financing.
Debt financing looks a bit reasonable compared to several years in the last 1 year.
Because they managed to do better by not doing the ways and means for a bit too much. Buhari's government does not know the meaning of financing at all. They mismanaged the way and means, and I don't know where the money went to, but they wasted a lot of money. So they have managed so far, but they have been a little more active on the bond market. So they're doing foreign borrowing. So the finance minister,
the CBN went to town, was on the road, yes, and got an oversubscription of the bond that he listed.
Yeah, he listed the bond on their behalf of the federal government. So what it means is that they are borrowing money in foreign exchange, which we have to pay down the line. When we come in, we are going to be able to pay that. But I'm not.
When you say when you come in,
I mean, the debt outlives the administration. So
also, you are hoping that the SDP is going to take over from the Tinubu government.
That's why we're working. We're working so that's why we are making sure whatever advice we give to them now is in the lighting self-interest, because you don't want the whole thing to be damaged by.
So it is true, all the plannings that we are seeing either during the day and the night, and there are reports also that the Northern League, Northern elites are meeting with some Southern leaders and planning ahead of 2027. So it's true that there are plans to take out the Tinubu government.
Of course there are plans. Our intention is to make sure that they are stable, they do their 4 years, and they go away. So that's the whole conversation. And the idea, the SDP component of it, is that we want it to be done in a way that there's a national consensus on how to run the economy, national consensus on security, national consensus on growth and development, not just a conspiracy to oust just one person. Because we've had in the past where you just gang up, oh, Jonathan has to go, or someone has to go. We don't want to do that. What we want to do now is that we have to have a consensus on the performance of the government, and we have to have a consensus on what we need to do once you want to come to power. So the most important thing is for SDP, the role SDP is playing is to try to show our manifesto to all of the people who are in politics, who believe that there needs to be a change, but the change should be around principles, around manifestos, around programs and plans. So it's not a personality issue.
So you don't really hope that things could get better to the point that if Tinubu government performs, they can be retained. You don't see that happening.
If you want to cut one of my fingers as a donation for them to perform, I will cut it. I don't mind. I want them to perform. But their performance, they already halfway. So the purpose of me coming here now is to give them some ideas with respect to their 2025 budget. It's not my budget. So we want them to perform because we want our people to live well. I drove to your office now on a road maintained by Wike, who's working for APC. I'm not against that. But I don't see that they can give us the journey, the speed we need beyond this administration. They can't give it to us. So we need to bring a better government than what we have now. But while we're helping them to patch up and go, but we need to bring a stronger SDP government that can come and help. And it's based on the principle, look at Chapter 2 of the Constitution, look at the National Development Plan, look at the talent that the country has, look at the fact that our people have a right to not live under insecurity, they have a right not to live under poverty, they have a right to see that government accounts for their revenue, and that those who are responsible in government are actually doing the job that they're asked to do. So if President Tinubu sees what we are doing and ups his ante, makes his job more serious, become more accessible to Nigerians, not just giving once in a year interview, then we become more competitive. We will still defeat them.
So you think that he needs to talk more to Nigerians?
He needs to communicate. It's not just, he needs to communicate because communication is part of the requirement of the job. You know, like they say in aviation, you have to aviate, navigate, and communicate. So you cannot say, I'm a pilot, I'm flying, and the control tower is talking to you. You say, no, I'm busy, I'm navigating. They're not going to, that's not good airmanship. So what you need to do in government, you cannot say, I am busy governing, I can't talk to you. It's not done.
So he has not done well in terms of communication. He needs to do more. That's what you're saying.
Yes, and from doing more, well, I know why they're not talking. Because
why?
It's like, remember that play by Larry to me? Man talk, woman talk.
Woman talk.
Yes, they know if they talk, we are going to talk too. And people can evaluate what they say and what we say. And so they refuse to talk. They just, okay, we won't talk to anybody. But in the end, they will have to talk because they have done they have done one budget, they are doing second budget now. And we are seeing that they are not meeting the mandate even by themselves. Check the statistics coming out of their bureau. They're not doing well. I'm studying what they want to do now. They want to rebase the economy. They also want to rebase our inflation database. So I'm watching them. At the end of the day, we see all the targets they set. Even if they achieve, my worry about 2025 budget is that even if they achieve the objective is not good enough. If you are paying high fees for your child going to school, and you tell the child, what are you going to do this year? He says, sir, Daddy, when I come home, I will have D in all my results. I'll make sure I have no F. Well, you're not going to be happy because a student that says, I'm going to have D parallel, it's not the kind of student you want. You want A, maybe a few B's, but A. So the budget they set for 2025 is that they're going to score D in the entire aggregate. And that D, people are doubting whether they can go from F to E and get to D. But the country needs minimum B+.
Just give me a moment. We're due for a break. But before we go on that break, I'm taking it upon myself to give you a test on your political understanding of political history and governance in this country. So today's quiz, everyone, and I'll see who the fastest fingers are. Today we'll be asking you the question: the 2015 presidential election was historic because, is it because it marked Nigeria's first digital voting system, or B, an incumbent president lost a re-election, or C, reduced age for younger people by law to run for office, or D, it had the highest voter turnout in Nigerian history? What is your own answer? The fastest fingers get it, and probably we're watching and waiting what your responses will be. You can go to our Twitter handle. We'll be seeing what your responses are. We go on a break, everyone. When we return, more conversation about the budget defense, what the Tinubu team are telling the National Assembly. Can the 2025 budget gives hope to Nigerians in the year 2025, and what should you be expecting? And more on this conversation when we return. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We've been analyzing and talking about the 2025 budget, the hopes for 2025, and what to expect under this Bola Tinubu administration. Prince Adebayo, he was the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the 2023 election, and he's been my guest on the program. Let me remind you, everyone, of what happened when the economic team of the president went for a budget defense meeting at the National Assembly. This was what some of the excerpts of the conversations at that meeting. Take a listen.
Look at the 2025 appropriation bill. We are poised to continue in the same positive direction, including increased economic growth. Under President Bola Tinubu, is no longer a place where rent seeking, where unproductive activity yields huge rewards.
Today, our subnationals are more liquid and they are able to meet their commitments. And even the federal government prioritization and performance of all the initiatives we have put forth, CNG transition, are all supporting the strategy, and we are seeing the benefit.
As much as the revenues are actually improving, but the independent revenues of the GOEs was very dismal. Even NLNG, the dividend that was meant to have come didn't come in as at that time. So I need a confirmation whether it has come in now, and how well are those GOEs performing.
One of the reasons that constituted the hope in the wheel of the successful implementation of the capital component of the budget, issues of payment, but now it is concentrated in the office of the Accountant General, and it has brought a lot of bureaucratic red tape and bottlenecks in the process of implementation, and it has also, according to that school of thought, breeded a lot of corruption.
Some of the conversations that they had in the National Assembly in the budget defense when members of the economic team, at some point when they were supposed to respond, and the media was asked to excuse them so that they can have a further conversation. But then, let me ask you, if you look at the details of the budget, it's about 49.7 trillion naira, and you look at the breakdown of by segment, the propositions and some of the calculations that the projections that the government is making in terms of the crude oil production value, the exchange rate, and a lot of what are the components of the 2025 budget, the total revenue, the crude oil benchmark. There are statics and there are dynamics also in some of these indices as presented by President Bola Tinubu. But you look at it, what comes out to you the most in all of this? What do you think is the positive? I know you have a few of the negative because you don't think that that is perhaps the best appropriation document that this government could have presented to the National Assembly. Is there any positive for you?
Well, the positive I can see is that they managed to avoid the over-reliance on ways and means. But I don't like a number of things. First, let me make a point which I must make. It is unconstitutional to ask journalists or the public to leave appropriation sessions. In fact, under the law, under the Constitution, when it has to do with money, it has to go to the committee of the whole house. Therefore, you have to be public. You are trying to spend the money of the public. You cannot ask representatives of the public to leave. Secondly, the mentality with which they are governing the country is a mentality of fly-by-night Bretton Woods people. You will see that the Minister of National Planning is calling states and local government subnationals. which is the language you will find IMF call them. It's not talking to them in the language of our constitution, that revenue going to the states and local government. That is wrong. Even Senator Abiru is using language of GOEs, which ordinary person will not understand. That's parliament. You ought to say government-owned enterprises, so that the people of Nigeria who you are representing can understand the business you are doing there. So this mentality, I raise it because it reflects in the way the budget is done. This budget is not autonomous. I think this budget has just been given to them. They're taking it and copying it from some external people, and that's where they have a number of problems. Now, look at the revenue generation. How can you not get to 39 trillion? It's just hovering around 39 trillion in revenue for the entire federal government of Nigeria for a whole 12 months period. That is the beginning of their problem. Are you governing this country correctly at all? Because if this is the revenue you are able to make with the entire, how many ministers you've got and everything you've got, and as big as Nigeria is, that is very poor. That is poor, completely poor. So it's the equivalent of having a 100-room hotel and you are declining the revenue of about 8 or 10 rooms there. So that is where the problem comes from, because when you take that revenue they are expecting, once you take that revenue, it's already it's too low. They are not governing in that case, because I believe they should have been able, with the devaluation of everything they've done, they should be able to collect revenue close to 120 trillion in the way they are. So that already, all their journey into problems begin from there. Because of this low revenue now, expenditure has to be higher. Therefore, they have the deficit. Because they have the deficit now, they have to do either quantitative easing, which will be terrible for the naira. No, they have to go now and ask the CBN to raise bonds for them overseas. They have to now delay payment to some contractors and other manipulations that they have to do. So the first thing they should try to correct, because these are just estimates, they're not binding. If you go to the National Assembly and say, I expect revenue of 39 trillion, it doesn't stop you from collecting revenue of 100 trillion. So they must immediately find it unacceptable, and I declare it unacceptable that the Tinubu administration does not collect revenue up to 100 trillion. Is unacceptable.
They should push beyond the 100 trillion mark.
They should go from 39 and aim towards 100 trillion.
Because, I mean, you look at some of the highest revenue generating agencies, talk about the NNPC, the customs, FRS, and all that. How would they be able to push towards that 100? Is it that there are loopholes or gaps, or you think that we need to produce
more? It's corporate governance. They're not governing. You see, go and ask people. I don't need to go ask people who import things. When you go to pay your custom duties, how much of it goes to the government? How much of it goes to some other corners? If you look at solid minerals,
so there are leakages.
Leakages. They are not. That's why I say when they talk about the world reform, they do not know the meaning of the world reform. If I were,
would the tax reforms bill would have solved the problem in some ways?
Of course, it will solve it. If they actually did a reform, for President Tinubu's birthday, I promise to buy a dictionary and use a marker to mark the meaning of reform and present to you as a gift. Because if they know the meaning of reform, what we call reform, they will have none of these problems that they have. But when you want to do a reform without fundamental changes, that is where you dupe yourself. Because if you do reforms with fundamental changes, the first question is a treasury question. Where is government money and who is holding it? Therefore, you go back to my campaign speeches regarding crude oil theft. Have they arrested that? No. It's reduced a bit, but they've not arrested it.
Well, I mean, recently we pushed the mark on crude oil production to over 2.5, I think, for the first time in a long time. And there are those who will say, maybe this is a sign or a signal of better days to come.
You push it based on investment of some IOCs coming to invest, but producing and collecting revenue are not the same. You had Senator Abiru, who's from them, is part of them, saying that even the government-owned enterprises are not remitting the money they're supposed to remit. You should know. He's a seasoned banker, and he's a senator from Lagos. He's one of them. He was a commissioner in the state government. He is also is not like from SDP or somebody who is trying to take over from them. He's part of them. He's saying the revenue is not coming in. I look at solid minerals. You notice that Dele Alake has been quiet of recent. He needs to tell us how has he improved on the revenue from solid minerals. Because what he managed to do is to raise tariff for licensed and miners and create some regulatory pushback for us. However, illegal mining is still thriving. So I can tell you that the amount of money stolen from illegal mining, right from Safara to Osun State, to Ebonyi State, to Nasarawa here, is far more than the entire budget that they are writing now.
All right. And there are concerns. Almost 60 or so GOE, government-owned enterprises. The budget for those GOEs are missing. They are not stated in the budget. I wonder what exactly. There's a whole lot of missing links in that budget. You look at it, there are several MDAs that they have a budget lumped up and not explicitly, transparently explained. And these are the issues. But for us to close this conversation, Prince Adebayo, for every Nigerian watching, the average citizen, yes, the individuals, the private citizen who are watching tonight, yes, it's a big year, 2025. The president and his government will be entering the 2-year mark, yes, halfway into their government. For any citizen to prepare their minds, either for the worst or for the best, what would be your final word to them tonight in their expectations and managing it?
Prepare your mind for the best. Hope for the best. But know that that best is a matter of the future. And the way to ensure that best comes is to make sure you speak out regarding this. In fact, in SDP, we were thinking about doing our own alternative budget. And we're looking at legality of it because the government is oversensitive and our national chairman is a very careful person. But we came up with the idea.
I'm not sure if there's anything like shadow government in the presidential and the federal
exactly. We thought,
system.
let us do a budget and read out our budget. Let them see that this is how to do a budget. And people say, look, they may say, oh, you're trying to take over the government or not. Because it shouldn't be so difficult to do a budget of hope, to do a budget of renewal, to do a budget of prosperity for the people. But what they are doing is just a bit of, I don't want to be rude, but I think they need to be better at governing. But the people of Nigeria should have hope. Not only that this government can be pushed to do right, that you have alternative to this government in about 2 years from now, and that the other state government too, not only President Tinubu now, there are 36 state governors, some of them have worse budget than the federal government, and that the new autonomy given to local government should allow local government to learn budgeting so that across the board, Nigeria will have a robust economy. But I believe that the faith in Nigeria should not be shaken, and I hope that all will be well with Nigeria. That's a God bless Nigeria.
Prince Adewale Adebayo is the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the 2023 elections. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much indeed.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year. Just before I go, and here is my final word, everyone, and it's directly to Mr. President. And I hope it's not too late to tell him a happy new year. And I'm hoping it's a new year, new Nigeria. There are a lot of people who say, new year, new me. Hoping it's a new year, new president, new Nigeria. Well, Mr. President, Nigerians are watching. They are counting the months, the weeks, and the days. And in 4 short months, your administration will enter its 2nd year. A pivotal milestone where patience gives way to accountability. You campaigned on the promises of renewed hope, better security, abundant food supply, and policies that should lift millions from hardship and poverty. Yet, after a year marred by soaring tariffs, crippling energy costs, and dwindling purchasing power, millions of Nigerians are grappling with unprecedented hardship. The question that echoes across the land is, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? But I hope everyone might want to start afresh with a renewed vigor and hope that 2025 will be a better year. You assured Nigerians that this pain is a prelude to progress, a difficult but necessary phase that would yield joy and prosperity. And Nigerians, resilient as ever, they've kept faith with you and in your words. But faith, Mr. President, is not infinite. Time is your most fleeting asset, and it is slipping away. As you approach the halfway mark of your 4-year term, it is clear the clock is not on your side any longer. The policies you've introduced require visible results. The people demand proof that their sacrifices will not be in vain. President Tinubu, Nigerians understand that you are not a magician, but he elected you with a hope that your policies would bring relief, not amplify their sufferings. Today, they are grappling with soaring inflation driven by the removal of fuel subsidies, skyrocketing food prices that have left over 30 million citizens at risk of hunger, and a naira devaluation that has crippled purchasing power. Transportation costs are at an all-time high. Businesses are struggling under regulatory uncertainties, and public outrage is mounting over government spending on luxury items while many live in abject poverty. Nigerians are not asking for miracles. They are asking for focus, action, and empathy. Fix at least 3 issues that directly impact survival. Stabilize food prices, make transportation affordable, and reduce inflation. You must assemble the best minds, regardless of region or allegiance, to tackle these challenges. Time is not on your side, Mr. President. Nigerians need urgent results, and they are watching. This new year offers you a fresh opportunity to reset, to lead with empathy, and to demonstrate that you truly mean well for the Nigerian people. Reduce the cost of governance, lead by example, and show Nigerians that sacrifice begins at the very top. Our leaders cannot luxuriate in opulence while citizens languish in poverty. This is a time for decisive, transformative action. Nigerians deserve a leader who is firm yet compassionate, bold yet introspective, and unwavering in his commitment to deliver the better Nigeria he promised. History is calling, Mr. President, and so are the people of Nigeria. As the media, we pledge to hold you accountable, to amplify the voices of the voiceless, and to demand justice for every Nigerian struggling to breathe under the weight of economic hardship. The sands of time are shifting. President Bola Tinubu, will you write your name in gold? And that is my final word tonight. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Good night.